فصل في الحث على طلب العلم والعمل والتعليم. واطلب علوم الدين وارقى إلى اليقين، فالعلم قوت القلب فيه رضاء الرب.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for an opportunity to resume our discussion on the themes from Islam and secularism. And today, inshallah, we shall be speaking about the second chapter of the book, following the first one that discusses the contemporary Western Christian background. The second chapter is titled Secularization and Secularism. This chapter is a very, of course, well-written work, and it's quite detailed in its exposition of the development of secularization, albeit in a very terse language that the author has chosen. But nevertheless, inshallah, within the span of, let us say, an hour or so, we will try to share some of the important aspects that I think can be gained from a reading of this work. Certainly, multiple readings will assist greatly and will expand our understanding, and references, of course, is required to read beyond this text, including the works that he has suggested in the footnotes. But first and foremost, so secularization and secularism, these are the themes that I've chosen to speak about. First is on the linguistic meaning of secularism that Professor Al-Attas has outlined, including the three integral components. And then we will speak a bit about secularization and its apparent similarities with the actions of Islamization. And then thirdly, we will go over the sketch of the movement of secularization in the Western civilization. So first, on this one, okay, all right, okay. So anyways, with regards to secularism, as Professor Al-Attas has outlined in his analysis of the term, the origins of the word lies in the Latin word saeculum, which connotes a spatial-temporal concept. The spatial aspect of it refers to the here, and the temporal aspect refers to the now. And out of this basic concept, Professor Al-Attas says that the mind can perceive how it can develop into an understanding that it refers to prioritizing of the here and now, leading to eventually what is called historical relativism, meaning to say that every historical moment is the most significant one, or it is the most decisive one, that all previous judgments which were thought to be consecrated will no longer be consecrated. That which was held sacred is to be, let us say, is to be re-evaluated. It's to be transvaluated at every day and age. So that's the basic meaning of secularism. And as for the here aspect, it denotes the removal of any spiritual realms over and beyond the temporal or the terrestrial region, let us say. And this movement is particular to the development of Western civilization, and particular to the development of Western Christianity, since in his other work, the Prolegomena, Professor Al-Attas also outlines the fact that this term secularism originally was used in the Latin period to refer to two kinds of clergymen, the lay clergymen, or what you call the ones involved in the worldly trades, and then those who are involved in the ecclesiastical work, like let us say in prayer and in other worldly matters. So therefore you can have secular clergymen, secular men of God, and those who are non-secular. So the secular refers to the non-ecclesiastical in that sense. So gradually you can imagine then as the civilization, as the metaphysical construct which we have discussed in the previous chapter, continues to be part and parcel of the worldview of the general public and learned amongst them. Eventually, as we will go through the sketch, eventually the secular elements of Western civilization came to supplant the religio-theological aspects. Professor Attas then cites the definition of secularism, or the integral components of secularization, as a philosophical program, citing the Dutch theologian Cornelis van Pursen, which is found in the book by Harvey Cox, The Secular City, in which first and foremost, where secularization or secularism is concerned, it involves the disenchantment of nature. And with this term, the disenchantment of nature, or the removal of the elements that enchants from nature. They borrow the term first coined by the sociologist Max Weber. Yeah, so as a result of, let us say, greater rational conquest of the realm of nature, they begin the magical aspects, the supernatural aspects of nature begin to recede. Yes, of course, the vestiges of this supernatural worldview, the vestiges of this mythological, animistic, magical worldview remains in language. It remains in language, and its disappearance, as it were, is like the grin of the Cheshire cat from Alice in Wonderland, isn't it? The cat is now long gone, but the grin remains. Like that. So when they speak about the disenchantment of nature, some of these vestiges of the previous worldview remains in Western language. Let us say when they say when you make insurance claims, yes, and then they say this is not this is excluded from the acts of God. They say like that, but they now no longer believe in that. So it's now nature is properly disenchanted, and of course this is the first and primary component of secularization, because the secularization of politics and deconsecration of values follows. So now let us look at, so therefore disenchantment is primary. When you remove any spiritual elements from nature, what is included within that picture is human beings who previously was thought to be soul and body, or body and spirit. So when you disenchant nature, the spiritual aspect of man becomes removed, and so it has to be explained within physical terms, or something which is quasi-spiritual, but no longer properly spiritual. Thus, they have the modern term, which have grown in popularity, which is called mind, or sometimes they refer to some aspects of its operations, which is called sometimes the consciousness is what becomes their major concern. And as we know, modern philosophy of mind tries to uncover this mystery, yes, because as they have developed and progressed in the realms of cognitive science, as they have now begun to unravel the hormonal connections and what they have now called neuroplasticity, meaning to say that certain habits and actions and will have an impact on even the biology of your mind, yes, based on their improved, let us say, measurement techniques. The problem of consciousness remains, yes, because as they well know, phenomenologically, meaning to say in terms of experience, they know that love, the experience of love and compassion that a person feels for another person, the nostalgic memories that he experiences, is much more than the firing of the neurons. They know, for example, that despite being able to speak about the experience of happiness being involved in, let us say, the firing of several hormones such as dopamine, or when they say that anger is the arousal of certain of certain other hormonal injections and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, they know that inwardly the experience is something else, and knowledge likewise as an experience is something else. And furthermore, even amongst their own thinkers who have, let us say, dabbled in in computer sciences and then in the cognitive sciences, they continue to problematize, let us say, the problem of consciousness. Rest assured, let us say, that with regards to the realm of nature, yes, the disenchantment of nature means the removal of any spiritual components. What is left, of course, is to explain it in a way that can be philosophically satisfying. So that is why they have, over the past, let us say, 2 centuries or so, yes, with the, according to them, the triumph of the evolutionary explanation of the origin of species, which, according to them, includes also the origins of man. They say that with the success of the evolutionary world picture, they have now been able to explain the world in terms of, let us say, biological processes without a need, let us say, without a need without a need to rely on a supernatural source of existence. But as they well know, yes, as they push the boundaries backwards, let us say, they continue to have problems in various other disciplines, including, let us say, cosmology and the origins of the universe. Yes, they at some point thought that the universe was eternal. Then eventually, with the great discovery of the Big Bang and so on, they perceive that perhaps that's the original point of the universe. And then, of course, they try to supply other explanations, like what they call a multiverse explanation. Yes. Eventually, of course, these are all means to rationalize an already pre-scientific philosophical assumption, a pre-scientific philosophical assumption about the eternity of the universe. Yes, which has been held by them ever since the time of the Greeks. But nevertheless, we will see that when we go through the sketch, how from the Greeks they got to the Enlightenment period, that the reason that Western civilization underwent the process of secularization is precisely because of the permeation of the elements of Western metaphysics within the structure of Western Christianity. So secondly, now let us see then what follows. Yes, naturally from the disenchantment of nature is what they call the desacralization of politics. Necessarily, when nature has been disenchanted and man is now explained, yes, in terms of his biological aspect primarily, and societies are explained based on human needs and human emotions. Ethics is explained based on human needs and psychology and emotions. Politics, likewise, becomes just a means, let us say, to ensure stability. Or politics is a means to ensure the survival of civilization, which is a human need. Yes, because as we know, no man is an island. Yes, that's a truism. Yes, that human beings cannot live on their own and supply all their needs. And secondly, also, what as a corollary to that, based on what they have studied with regards to human nature, is their understanding that without some notion of a social contract to base human societies, then human beings will be in a continuous state of war. Yes, what Thomas Hobbes have described in detail. But nevertheless, the result of secularization is the desacralization of politics and the explanation of politics merely in terms of wants and needs and desires, and in terms of the stable, yes, the stable organization of power and liberty. Yes, so basically, the question of politics becomes a matter of the establishment of a structure that can allow, yes, for the flourishing of the individuals. Yes, as a matter of human need. Yes, not as a matter of divine injunction, not as a matter of divine prohibition, not as a matter of the flourishing of the spirit, and so on. What has already been implied in our discussion about the desacralization of politics is the third element, which is the deconsecration of values. And perhaps amongst the early philosophers in modern times, because in earlier times, certainly there were already materialist philosophers who understood that no values are basically to be consecrated, because all are human doings. Yes, since the time of the sophists, yes, Protagoras is reported to have said. Um, um, Protagoras is reported to have said that man is the measure of all things. In other words, what he deems good is good, what he deems bad is bad, and no man can be said to be above another person. Yes, if a person is to be deemed an authority or above another person, it is merely in the fact that, let us say, he has higher intelligence or he has greater experiences, but he has to justify his role, let us say, through a means that is understandable by others. So, but no values, let us say, is handed from the heavens. So thus, values becomes deconsecrated. Now, but in more recent times, it was perhaps Friedrich Nietzsche who helped popularize the notion of the transvaluation of values in several of his well-known works, one of which is called Beyond Good and Evil. A poetic expression of it is found in his Thus Spoke Zarathustra, also in his Twilight of the Idols, and several. We can say that perhaps this is if we are looking for a germ of the central ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche, is the notion of the genealogy of morality, the idea that morality is basically an expression of the will to power. Yes, morality is an expression of the will to power. In other words, that either you exhibit, yes, the morality of the creative geniuses or the powerful, or you exhibit the morality of the poor. And according to Nietzsche, all the mythological language of previous ethical structures and religions ultimately return back to the will to power, yes, but expressed in ethical language. Of course, there are other means of expressing the notion of the deconsecration of values. As we know, in the 20th century, the Vienna Circle, as represented by Alfred Jules Ayer, propounded the notion of ethics as emotivism. Yes, ethics as emotivism, meaning to say what is right is whatever is in agreement with your desires, and what is wrong is whatever which is in disagreement with it. Earlier on, of course, in the 18th and 19th century, you have the utilitarians who consider that they have some sort of logical proof, yes, from the fact that they say that to begin with, yes, their premise is that from the fact that everyone desires pleasure, or from the fact that everyone desires happiness or pleasure, and everyone hates pain, it follows that we should, yes, from that fact, yes, he jumps to the conclusion that we should espouse an ethical theory or an ethical philosophy, an ethical policy that maximizes happiness for the maximum number of people, yes, and minimizes pain for them. Yes, but in truth, as we know, there's something problematic about this proof, yes, so-called proof, because first and foremost, although everyone desires pleasure for themselves and refuses pain, they don't desire pleasure for other people, isn't it? They only desire it for themselves. And then, of course, also at the same time, sometimes the good of pleasure is cancelled out. Yes, it's cancelled out by higher goods, like the good for justice. Yes, I remember perhaps when I was in my undergraduate days, the professor he gave an example. Supposing that you are, the head of a small town or small village, and then let us say that there was let us say some theft. Yes, that's happening. That's happened now, and you're now responsible for the village. He said, supposing that your village is now under pressure by the higher authorities to hand in, yes, the culprit, and if not, the entire village, their rations would be cut. Yes, their rations would be cut. Yes, but you do not know who this person is, and for all you know, it might not even be anyone in the village. Yes, so if you follow the utilitarian function in this case, you would just select any other person, and sacrifice him for the sake of the community. Sacrifice him for the sake of the community, so that the entire community will enjoy it. But this contradicts the good of justice, isn't it? Because you're not supposed to, you're not to punish an innocent person like that. Nevertheless, yes. So that's the state of modern ethics, basically, which Alistair McIntyre has explained in greater detail. Of course, there are ideologies, yes, which are secular in nature. Let us say, like capitalism, socialism, communism, yes, and it's in its various colors, like Marxism and so on. That has perhaps even more serious and condescending ideas about human liberty. As Karl Marx, for example, developed the notion of what he called the base and the superstructure. The base and the superstructure, based on the logic of his logic of the development of history, is what he calls a dialectical materialism. Now, dialectical materialism is a through and through secular ideology. Yes, because it makes no reference to a creator. It makes no reference to any spiritual elements, including within man. So he went as far, let us say, within dialectical materialism, to suggest that even your ideologies, yes, your beliefs, your religious beliefs, which you hold, which you cherish, and so on, these are basically superstructures. These are epiphenomena, let us say. Like in a lake, let us say, if there is a tree, and then you see that there's a shadow in the lake. Yes, the shadow in the lake is a mere epiphenomenon. It is there because the tree is there. If you chop down the tree, then the shadow is gone. Yes, but if you were to throw let us say, a rock in the lake, the tree is not affected. Yes, so the base and superstructure theory is something akin to that. Yes, so your beliefs, your moralities, and so on, these are merely a function of your relation to the means of production. Yes, if you're the bourgeoisie, then you'd have a certain type of ideology. And if you're the proletariat, meaning to say you are the have-nots, then you have a certain other kind of ideologies. Of course, this is to a certain extent correct, but we do not go as far as to say that this is all there is. It is mere superstructure compared to the real basis. Nevertheless, so this results from the disenchantment of nature. So morality within this world picture is meaningless. Yes, morality within this picture is meaningless. So basically, history proceeds along its path of development, and human beings are mere agents. Yes, mere agents to reflect what is happening in this cycle. So in a sense, the justice is meaningless like that. Of course, this Marx's notion of what is called dialectical materialism is a progression or is a development or an inversion of the Hegelian idea of the dialectics of history. In Hegel, it is also like that. Yes, but except that for Hegel, human beings are agents of the ideas of history. Yes, it is not it's not that human beings are agents of matter and material movements, but human beings are agents of the movement of the ideas in history. There is, let us say, a movement towards some sort of unity towards the end. Yes, based on the notion of the thesis, encountering its antithesis, and then eventually leading to a synthesis of that, and then that new synthesis will encounter a new antithesis, and so on. So we are just, let us say, as bubbles in the shore. Yes, we're just being thrown one generation after another. No one is really free, yes, except to exemplify the spirit of the age, let us say. There's various others, yes, ideologies. Yes, you can take your pick in this day and age. You pick up a philosophy book, and then one week you're this, and then another week you're that. Yes, there's no real basis. Yes, in the Ahwan al-Bayt, yes, as the Quran says that the weakest of houses is the house of the Ankabut, as the house of the spider, and that is because in terms of its reference, it is because a man who builds his own ideology based on his own fancy, yes, will the next day build another fancy, what he fancies, and so on and so forth. And as we know, as Paul Johnson has described in his book, The Intellectuals, yes, he managed to to share the biographies of some of these great, so-called great philosophers in the modern times, and how none of them, let us say, reflect properly, yes, their ideology. Yes, none of them are truly ethical. Yes, because these are just basically fancies of the imagination. They do not really bring about good people and so on. So now, since we have, let us say, basically covered the three components, yes, the disenchantment, the secularization, and the consecration of values, we have also to understand that it affects greatly a culture and a society that was previously that held, let us say, a theistic worldview, yes, the Christian societies of Europe. So the Christian societies of Europe believe in several things, yes, which were anathema to secularization. One of which was the belief in fate, yes. So therefore, secularization defatalizes history. Yes, the defatalization of history meant that there's no notion of the doctrine of destiny. Yes, there's basically no one's story is written. Yes, you are to write your own story. That success and failure is in its ultimate scheme, it's meaningless. But it's in its short term and mid-term goal, yes, it is wholly dependent on your efforts. But then again, yes, despite saying that, they know that there's a great number of factors that lies beyond their choice. Yes, so it becomes a matter of it becomes a matter of releasing, let us say, man into this great canvas of nothingness. Yes, until everything in the ultimate schemes becomes meaningless. Because first, why is there something rather than nothing? Yes, is a question that they no longer can answer. Yes, they say that it's a meaningless question. They say it just is. Yes, it just is. Can you were you desired into existence? Not necessarily. Yes, you were the products of let us say chance and accidents of history. Now, defatalization is an aspect of that. So of course, belief in afterlife is also removed. Belief in God as the source of divine commands is also removed. So gradually, you can imagine if you wish to enrich your reading and understanding of this development in history, one excellent book is Professor Charles Taylor's Secular Age, as it's almost 1,000 pages long. There is so within this, basically, he recounts in much more depth and detail the journey of what happened in Western civilization. How, say, let us say, from the 16th century, when it was almost inconceivable, let us say, yes, when it was almost inconceivable that a person would have a worldview which is not Christian in nature, yes, and to be shared in public. Of course, privately it may happen, yes, until they got to a period whereby even for the staunchest of them, yes, even for the staunchest Christians who remain, say, let's say, after this great event of secularization, they themselves acknowledge that Christianity is just one worldview amongst other possible worldviews. So what has happened then in society? How did secularization as a philosophical program permeated their culture, permeated their education, permeated their ethics, permeated their politics, permeated their art, their philosophy, their science, until it eventually, the present condition is described by the author as the condition of secularity. Yes, basically that they have now inhabited a world, yes, that the secular is the given. And of course, if you were to read there within that, and also other such works such as Richard Tarnas's Passion of the Western Mind, he gives some reasons for that. Some of these factors were political, others were technological. Yes, the political reason is involved in the continuous wars, yes, between the different kingdoms of Europe, and they are aligning themselves with one of the factions of Christianity. For within Christianity, there arose, yes, in the period of the Reformation, yes, groups who were against, let us say, the monopoly invested in Catholicism, And then also we can add to this the technological reason was because of, according to them, the invention of printing and the dissemination of the Bible in the vernacular languages, which was perhaps a consequence of the Reformation also. Yes, Martin Luther, Zwingli, and several of these Protestants. Yes, so they are that and several and also the supplanting of Western civilization, or rather Christian civilization, from within. Yes, the university structure, as you know, as we will discuss here in more detail, where it was because of the absorption of Aristotelianism within Christianity in the 13th century that gradually influenced the worldviews. So, with all this happening, yes, how do we as Muslims understand our relationship, yes, to secularization? Yes, and what do we say about the components? So, as has already been described, since the disenchantment of nature is the fundamental element there, we have to see how for the modern Protestant Christians, which Professor Attas has described in the first chapter, the ones who wish to merge modern Christianity with secularization, for them, they had to employ the techniques of hermeneutics to prove that the Bible contains seeds of secularization. Yes, like Harvey Cox, yes, in the Secular City, he wanted to show that the roots of secularization was found there in the Bible, and that how basically all three, disenchantment, desecularization, and deconsecration, is rooted in the movement of the Bible. Professor Attas said that with regards to the religion of Islam, these three components, yes, contains great similarities, yes, with regards to Islamization. Since Islamization, first and foremost, is the liberation of the mind, yes, and language from magical, mythological, animistic, ethnic, and cultural elements of one's worldview that runs in contradiction to the worldview of Islam. So, as we know in the Quran, for example, the supernatural elements were banished, yes, other than that which is sanctioned in the Quran. For example, when the Meccan chieftains, yes, when they used to pray to the idols, yes, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala explained that these idols do not possess life, that they are unable to speak, for example, that they don't have a revelation, that they have nothing to teach. And further, the fact that the belief in omens, yes, was also challenged by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let us say one of the Arabs used to believe in several ill omens, ill-bearing omens. Let us say like the month of Safar, for example, is a month that they should avoid. They should avoid having weddings and so on and so forth. Because it brings about bad luck and so on. The Prophet ﷺ challenged this by marrying in the month of Safar and marrying his beloved daughter also in the month of Safar. Yes, and challenging also, for example, the astrological assumptions, yes, of the Arabs and so on. So that's disenchantment of nature. Yes, to remove nature of these mysterious elements that they attributed to nature without proper argument. But the disenchantment of nature in Islam did not go as far, acknowledges limits. Yes, because once nature is now understood, yes, as ayat, and so the Quran brings about this fundamental notion that nature is the signs of God. Yes, in the same way as his book, yes, the revealed book are his signs, nature are also the signs of God. And to discern the purpose of contemplating about nature is to discern the wisdom, yes, the generosity, the overwhelming generosity and wisdom of the incomparable author of existence. Yes, that's the purpose of contemplating nature. And further, with regards to man, as man is understood within the scheme of things as the Khalifa, the vicegerent of God. Yes. So man understands that the purpose of Islam is to liberate him. Yes? So Islamization is a program of liberation. It is to liberate man from, let us say, the hell of human vices. Yes? The hell of human vices. It is to liberate him such that he can return to his spiritual reality. Islamization, as Professor Al-Attas said, is not so much an evolution as it is a devolution. Yes, meaning to say, to return to your state of spiritual perfection. Yes, to return to your spiritual state of perfection. And further, with regards to nature. So there's three kind of major understandings with regards to nature. Some of these are false. One is that in the previous worldviews, they tend to worship nature, meaning to say they confuse the sign for the signified. Yes, they confuse the sign for the signified. So therefore, they worship aspects of that. And it is amazing when we see about this, because there were worshippers of the sun who do so because of the majazi, the analogical or the metaphorical elements of the sun, because the sun illuminates, the sun gives heat, the sun causes growth. Yes. And when we say illuminates, the sun is the one that allows us, let us say, to perform our daily tasks, majazi, metaphorically. So they mistake, therefore, the metaphor for the reality. As the reality of the reality is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created the sun, of which the sun, yes, is under his dominion ultimately. And similarly, the moon, yes. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said the entirety of creation, and not just a pebble, a rock, or a stream, yes. All of these, yes, they make tasbih to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we know, when we look at the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being the messenger of Allah, yes, and sent as he was as a mercy to the entirety of creation, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was more luminous than the sun. Yes, more luminous than the sun, because the sun illuminates us in order that we can find a path while we are in the world. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam illuminates us so that we can proceed to eternal felicity. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is more calming than the moon. Yes, for the moon, yes, illuminates us in our nights, such that we can have brilliant poetry and soliloquy. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's light, internal light, yes, the reflective of the eternal light, yes, illuminates our hearts and soul. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in a sense, is, yes, it is not too far off to perceive that he was the Siraj and the Qamaran Munira. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives him these descriptions, then these descriptions to him are not merely metaphorical. They possess some reality. Yes, just as he is the example, he is also a luminous being. And with regards to these three processes, so nature is disenchanted insofar as the batil, but what remains of nature is the reflection of al-haq. Yes, what remains of nature is the reflection of al-haq. And secondly, as we said just now, of the misunderstandings pertaining to nature. First is to take nature as an object of worship. Second, the false understanding of nature is to, in the West, is to treat nature with vengeance. Because while in history they were overawed by its powers, they worshipped it. Yes, in history they worshipped it. They were overawed by its powers. They suffered, let us say, with nature. Then when they have, let us say, gained, yes, a new understanding of themselves and reality, they treated nature with vengeance. Yes, as we know with the Francis Bacon's cry, the cry of let us say knowledge as power, yes, and dominion. So they sought then to take their revenge on nature, to pulverize nature in terms of its resources, to, well, billah, sometimes it is just merely out of out of pure fun. Some of them, as we read in the history books, how some of them, for example, would cause devastations on earth, just as, by the movement of crops and flora and fauna from place to place, out of their, let us say, out of their greed. Yes, they transplanted some of their cash crops to other parts of the world of which it doesn't belong. They introduced predators to certain, let us say, ecosystems that will not be able to sustain it, and so on. They continue to do such things as treating nature with vengeance, seeing that now nature has been left on their hands. And third, it is an extension of the second, from dominion to their understanding of developing the world. Yes, and this is an illusion. Yes, because the world cannot be developed. If you think about it, what can be developed is only life within the world. Yes, the world as it is, yes, contains already from within itself, yes, all that there is for the benefit of man. Of course, man, out of his observation, yes, can extract honey and gold and silver. Man can develop out of these fundamental things beautiful architecture. Man can, at the same time, find means to live more comfortably, to preserve their food, and so on and so forth. But to make the false and arrogant claim that you can develop nature is something else. And to found, yes, to found cities and to found countries, all on this false notion of development. Yes, what is it? Yes, in truth, yes, the true nature of development, as Professor Al-Attas is saying, is to mimic as far as we can, or rather to emulate as far as we can the quality, yes, the quality of the community of the people of Medina around the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So when we say that the desacralization of politics, where it is involved, it is to desacralize any political systems and to desacralize any political power or claimants to power, yes, with the exception of that which is sanctioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's desacralization of politics, properly so. In other words, we do not say that we do not sanctify, nor do we glorify, let us say, greed. We do not glorify the culture of corruption, because these are against the commands of the Sharia. We do not glorify, for example, yes, what is a fundamental moral wrong as a human right, as we do not consider, for example, these as let us say, struggles for justice. These are basically struggles for freedoms, and these freedoms are indeed, the freedom to further corrupt yourself. Yes, is not a right. Yes, we desire rather that society would be patterned in the pattern of those who are liberated in their spirit. And similarly, with regards to values, those values which are consecrated are the values that brings us back, yes, to our humanity, yes, in terms of love, compassion, sincerity, truthfulness. The values which are consecrated are the values of taqwa, meaning to say that these are not to be treated equally with the products of the human imagination. So that's the second section, the secularization versus Islamization in terms of its impact. And why do we have to be overly concerned about secularization as a philosophical program? As we know, secularization impacts virtually everyone on the face of the earth today. And with regards to Islam, of course, it will not be impacted by secularization in the same way as Western Christianity had, as Western civilization had, because of some fundamental differences. First, as Professor Al-Attas outlined, our notion of Islam as a revealed religion is different compared to how they understand themselves as a revealed religion. The Swedish theologian Nathan Soderblom, he wrote an important book on the nature of revelation, of which he includes within that book typology of religions. According to him, some religions are revelatory in nature, and some religions are mystical in nature. So that which is mystical in nature, he groups as what he calls the Eastern religions. Basically, the purpose of these Eastern religions is to achieve a sort of some spiritual liberation or some spiritual experience through the experience of the cosmos, of being one with the cosmos and so on. But they don't claim possession of revelation, and their, let us say, their divinely, we will say, their spiritual books, so to speak, are basically the results of spiritual exercises that they share as part of their journey, and as for others to emulate if they wish to liberate themselves from the suffering of materialism. But as for revealed religion, which in Soderblom's account is grouped together the Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This contains commands and prohibitions from a personal God. They command messages from messengers who were men of flesh and blood, who bring about glad tidings and of the coming of an afterlife. So basically, they contain these are the similarities. Let us say they all speak of a theology, of a personal God. They all speak of an eschatology, of an ultimate end for the virtuous, and what shall happen of the vicious. And so these apparent similarities, for Professor Attas said, is not sufficient for us to agree with his categorization, because we must be more prudent, or rather we must be more careful when we speak about revelation, at the very least in order to understand ourselves. As Professor Attas is saying, that with regards to the religion of Islam, first and foremost, the Arabic of the Quran is divinely charged, in a sense, to contain the message, and it is preserved until today. So not only do we say that the Quran, in the form that it was revealed from the tongue of the Prophet ﷺ, is preserved to the very day, but by extension, the Arabic of the Quran is preserved to the very day, to our very day, including the disciplines and the sciences that has been developed in order to explain what is contained within the Quran, like the hadith and its sciences, like the books of jurisprudence, the books of fiqh, like also the books of aqidah, and then also included within this valid interpretations of cosmology from the Quran, as all of these derive from that same source. Number one. Number two is the fact that there is just as the Quran remains unchanged, we have a great amount of the collected sayings and the actions of the Prophet ﷺ, including the rituals of the religions, which are not innovated, whose roots are found in the statements of the Prophet or in his actions. And then the name of the religion is found in the Quran. And then we find that in terms of the fundamental matters with regards to belief, faith, and the divine law, all of these things are rooted in that phenomena of revelation, which is not the same with regards to what has happened to Western Christianity, with regards to its absorption of the traditions, the rituals, its creeds, and so on and so forth. Anyone who wishes to delve deeply into this history may read the books of their own theologians and their own historians. Now, nevertheless, then we finally get to the third component, the brief sketch as to how the West came to be secularized as the way it did today. Already we have discussed the metaphysical component in this first chapter when we spoke about Parmenides, and we spoke about Descartes and also the Thomistic synthesis. But here in this chapter, Professor Attas wrote this brief sketch, and he acknowledges some of his debts to Professor Hussein Nasr, because he said that what he sketched here you may find in some similarity to what Professor Hussein Nasr wrote in Man and Nature, although it is at the same time it is original, it is from his own deliberation, So he describes first and foremost, yes, how how the problem came to be in our present state. It begins with the the Greek period. So in the Greek period, as we know, that there was a time which is recorded in some of their books of mythology, like Homer's Odyssey and so on, that they used to believe in a cosmology or in a universe permeated with the existence of gods, and these gods are basically immortal beings which are human-like. These are anthropomorphic deities. Anthropomorphic deities in the sense that they have emotions like human beings, desires like human beings. They also suffer from strife. They suffer from enmity between themselves. That they marry and have children. They also have scores to settle from between themselves, and they interact with the people of the world. These are all well recorded. But eventually, when the moral depravity came to a certain limit until it basically challenges human fitrah, let us say, some of the philosophers started to challenge the veracity of these accounts. Yes, and some were recorded as part and parcel of the dialogues of the philosophers. Amongst those who challenged the gods was Socrates, yes, which he was eventually he was tried and forced to drink the hemlock for. Yes, one of the charges was atheism, meaning to say conspiracy against the gods, and then the other charge was corrupting the youth. Yes, which is basically one and the same thing, because not only did he challenge the gods, he was opening up a class. Let us say he was teaching people. He went around. Yes, poking questions at some of their these are very unsettling issues. So we can sense there in the Quran there is something akin to this in what Sayyidina Ibrahim did, to challenge the polytheists in their worship of the idols. Yes, when he destroyed these various statues and allowed for one to survive. Yes, and then attributed it to them. And what is interesting in this account in Surah Al-Anbiya is that once he questioned them, asking them, why is it that you worship them when you know that they don't speak? Yes, they fell in silence, and one of the description was that they bowed their heads, meaning to say they were defeated in argument. They were not able. Yes, and another, of course, the Abrahamic brilliance. Yes, in his logical argumentation is also on full display when he challenged, perhaps it was Namrud. Yes, when the latter said that when he first said that my Lord is the one who gave life and take it away, and he said I can take life and give away. Metaphorically, of course, he killed one and let the other live. So rather than to explain that his reasoning was wrong, he adopted a different strategy and said, well, my Lord is the one who raised the sun from the east. Why don't you raise it from the west? Yes. So he was silenced, and that kind of argument. Imam Al-Ghazali made this the basis of his book on Quranic logic, let us say, the Qistas al-Mustaqim. Yes. But necessarily what we find from this, the difference, the key distinction between the Socrates of history and Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam was that human logic can arrive at human logic can arrive that so and so is not God. But to arrive at the positive conclusion that Allah is God, and to arrive at a conclusion that I should submit to Him, and to arrive at the conclusion that this is desired of me, this man is in need of guidance. Yes. Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam said that, after proving that neither the sun nor the moon nor the stars are his God, he said he's in need of guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah guided him. But in terms of the Socrates in the history books, or rather in what we read of the dialogues pertaining to Socrates, as far as we know, he only went as far as challenging the fundamental contradictions of the Greco worldview, the Hellenic worldview, until eventually the philosophers after Socrates, or perhaps even during the Socratic times, those who had similar outlook basically banish all the gods from their conception. What was left eventually, yes, as it developed until the time of Aristotle, was a rationalism and naturalism, basically a reliance on one's rational capacity and the belief in nature as an organism. The belief in nature as an organism consisting of systems. There's biological systems. There are, let us say, systems of there's plants. There's zoological. There's man, which is also psychological, and then there is the cosmos. Yes, these are the beings in the world. And then, of course, he tried to arrive at a higher conclusion when he starts to deliberate on metaphysical questions such as change, corruption, generation, where these things happen, how these things happen. Eventually, he comes to some sort of epiphany with regards to the prime mover and all of these things, try to be put together like that. But nevertheless, it was a naturalism. Yes, it was the idea that there is this functioning reality external to ourselves. Yes, that exhibits elements of cosmos and arranged order, but this is not the source of revelation or anything. But nevertheless, once materialism was taken in within the Roman period, this became the default setting. Yes, many people came to accept. Yes, many people came to accept this rationalism/naturalism, such that it became the foundation when Christianity was spread in the Western world, when it was transferred to Rome, let us say, with the concomitant Latinization of its symbols. They did not, at least in that stage, as they did not counter the misunderstanding of nature. Instead, they preferred the attitude of demeaning nature. And with regards to the human intellect, whereas reflection on nature in our understanding brings us towards a greater appreciation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For them, they rejected the ratiocination with regards to nature, nor the intellectual, what we call the spiritual cognition of God, instead preferring will, yes, the will, which is basically based on love, yes, based on the experience of love. So basically, it is a matter of willing to believe, not understanding. Yes, in a sense, for us, in our worldview, what is important is certainty. It is yaqeen. It is ilm. You have to understand it. You have to be able to grasp it. Yes, but for them, yes, at least amongst some of these early fathers, they promoted the notion of just submitting, yes, without necessarily understanding. And then gradually, as they reach the Cartesian revolution. Before that, there was the period of the ratio intellectus. What time is it now?
10.
Okay. I think perhaps we can have this as a second session. Okay. So inshallah we'll stop here at the Cartesian, at the ratio intellectus, and we'll begin here where we left off.
Inshallah next week, same time.
Inshallah. Okay. Is there any questions on that?
We'll take time. You want to take a question now, or?
Okay, inshallah we will begin the questions with the questions in the next session. And if there's more questions, you can write it down. We will finish inshallah with Kafaratul Majlis and Surah Al-Asr.